When it comes to Cape Vincent and Riverview correctional facilities, the two state prisons are closer to capacity with inmates than first thought. It's a deeper dive into the numbers tonight with 7 News reporter Sean Brinda.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul wants to close up 5 more state prisons this year. State Assemblyman Scott Gray has 2 state prisons in his district, Cape Vincent and Riverview in Ogdensburg. One metric he thinks is important to point out is that these prisons are well staffed.
Both facilities running at full capacity, both facilities, both in the correction side and in the medical side, are fully staffed, which is critically important because this whole closure is based on a staffing shortage.
When it comes to inmate capacity, 7 News reported in January that Cape Vincent and Riverview could hold 726 inmates each. Both had around 500 inmates, meaning they were 70% full, numbers provided by the state. But a deeper dive shows of each prison's 726 beds, the state calls 200 of them unstaffed, meaning there aren't 726 beds. There are 526. Do the math, and each prison is 95% full. Gray says that distinction is important and also believes both Cape Vincent and Riverview are important to the state because the prisons provide educational programming to inmates.
Both of the facilities in the 116th have educational programs. We have JCC at Cape Vincent. We have Potsdam at Riverview. We have vocational programming. So we have top-notch programming at those facilities in order to rehabilitate people.
The other state prison in the North Country is in Gouverneur. Local leaders say it has a high rate of inmates and staff. There's no indication from New York officials which prisons are set to close. Sean Brinda, 7 News.